Good morning, everyone, and welcome to the Meet Your Future campaign. I'm Claire Walker, and I'm part of the Bridge GM team at Greater Manchester Combined Authority. I'm joined today as well by my colleague Jane Wells, who's taking care of the technology in order for us to take you through this live session. I'll introduce you to them all in a few moments, but to celebrate the theme of today being International Women's Day, and this whole week being National Careers Week 2022, we're delighted to host and hear from a panel of female professionals this morning, representing a range of employers in Greater Manchester. And the presentation that you'll have with them today is called Women in Leadership. In this session now, you will hear from Emma McRae, Holly Potton, Beth Moddo, Holly Caldwell and Janine Higgins. They represent the Coders Guild, Civil Service, Auto Trader and ISG. I'm now delighted to introduce and pass you over to Holly for our session, which is Women in Leadership.
Thank you very much, everyone. So good morning. I am from the Civil Service with my colleague Emma, and I'm just going to give you a little bit of a brief rundown on what the Civil Service actually does. So next slide, please. So the Civil Service is a collection of different government departments and agencies. This ranges from the British Forces, the Houses of Parliament, and other jobs that you may not even realise were under like the Civil Service umbrella. So these can be like prisons and even issuing driver's licenses. So we deliver different public services and support the government to develop and implement policies. So we are coordinated and managed by the Prime Minister, and we work for the public. So our main collective goal is to help as many people as we possibly can in all the areas that we cover. So we are politically impartial and we are independent of the government, and we work in central government departments and agencies. We are accountable to the public. So because of that, we want to meet the highest standards possible in all that we do. So we aim to have integrity. So we want to put the obligations of public service above personal interests. Honesty, we want to be truthful and open. We want to be objective, so basing advice and decisions on rigorous analysis and on evidence. And we want to be impartial, acting solely accordingly to the merits of the case. So there are over 400,000 civil servants working across the world in different departments. So these are like transportation, education, housing, and we even have a department based on food. So most people believe the majority of us work in London, but actually only 20% of us actually do. So for example, I live in Oxford and I work in Andover, and my colleague Emma, she lives and works in Scotland. So we're completely spread out, a lot more than people actually believe. So when people think of a civil servant, they probably often think of a man in a bowler hat, in a suit with a briefcase, traveling to London and being on the train. But actually, we look a bit more like the top right-hand corner on the slideshow. We're actually very diverse, and there's lots of different jobs that fall under the civil service. So it makes us unique. We have fighter pilots, construction workers, project managers, and they all fall underneath the civil service umbrella. So essentially, we work for you, the public. We want to improve the lives and the services of as many people as possible. And we do this by working together within the public sector. Next slide, please.
Thanks, Holly. So I'm Emma. I also work for the Civil Service, and so now you know from Holly's presentation a little bit more about the Civil Service. We want to tell you a little bit about women in leadership in the Civil Service. So every year since 2001, more than half of all civil servants have been women. This has increased from 46% in 1991 to 54% in 2018. 43% of senior civil servants are women, and this has increased from 17% in 1996. So we have some really positive trends in terms of getting more women into civil service positions and leadership positions within that. So Bernadette Kelly, who you can see on the screen, is just one example of a woman in leadership within the civil service. She's currently the permanent secretary at the Department of Transport. So permanent secretaries are responsible for the overall running of a department. So it's kind of the highest grade you can get in a department. Just to give you a bit of background on Bernadette and to kind of illustrate how careers in the civil service work, Bernadette joined the civil service after graduating from the University of Hull. She spent most of her career working on public policy in relation to business and the economy, but has held posts in a large number of departments and has made the most of varied and flexible career opportunities that the civil service has. And if you ever research any civil servants, you'll find that that's pretty similar across the board. People who have had long careers in the civil service and have often done a multitude of different roles in many different departments, such as the range that Holly presented at the start. However, leadership is not just about being the highest ranking. Leadership is important and valuable at every stage of your career. For example, both Holly and I are currently on a graduate scheme run by the civil service called the FAST stream. So this is a stream that happens after you've gone to university, if that's something you choose to do. So it's an accelerated leadership development programme which allows you to experience 3 or 4 roles over 3 or 4 years within the civil service and gives you exposure to a huge range of topic areas and projects. Fast streamers like us are encouraged and supported in taking leadership positions from their first day on the stream. For example, I have taken leadership positions in my current role in the Scottish Government by leading on work relating to the development of a new strategy. And this was something that I hadn't experienced before, but the civil service really encourages you to take new opportunities and develop your skills. Once we finish the FAST stream, we will be encouraged to apply for promotion to a higher role in potentially a different department that we haven't worked in before, and to take on lots of new opportunities. Just a bit of background about the FAST stream. You apply to the FAST stream in your final year of university or any other year after you graduate from university. However, this isn't the only route into the civil service. There are other routes, including through apprenticeships and direct entry positions, which do not require a university degree if that's not something you want to do. You can go online to find out more about this. I believe the slides will be shared afterwards with all the links. So I've given you one example, Bernadette, of a leader in the civil service, but it's really important to recognise there are many different types of leaders and they all have different qualities that make them great leaders. The civil service has a list of some behaviours that it expects from its leaders, such as being inclusive, empowering, enabling, a team player and resilient. Whilst it's important that everyone has these qualities to some extent, different people may express them in different ways. For example, someone may be really good at explaining and empowering their staff, but may be actively developing their confidence and inspirational skills. This is really useful because different people work in different ways, and some people may respond best to one type of leadership, whereas another may respond better to another. Having diversity in leadership styles is therefore important to make sure that everyone is being productive at work and getting the most out of their job. This is encouraged throughout every level of the civil service, and there are a huge number of development opportunities to help you develop your skills, whether there's a certain skill you've identified that you might want to work on, or if there's something you hadn't thought of before, often you come across lots of opportunities. So that is a very brief introduction to the civil service and women in leadership within the civil service. Hopefully you have a bit of a better idea of what the civil service is, the types of roles you can do within the civil service, and how we encourage effective and high quality leadership throughout the organisation. We'll be more than happy to answer any questions at the Q&A, but if you don't get a chance to ask your question, we'll send, I think, around some slides with links to our website where you can find more information. Thanks very much.
Thanks so much. Thanks for that, Emma and Holly. Beth, could I hand over to you now if you're next?
Sure, thank you. Good morning, everyone. So my name's Beth and I work for a company called Wilmot, Dixon Construction. So I will be talking to you about the world of construction. So if you're thinking it's not for you, please don't switch off, give me a chance, and maybe I can convince you to think differently. So Wilmot Dixon Construction is a national company, which means we work across, up and down the whole of England and Wales too. They say everyone is pretty much within about 5 miles of a building that Wilmot Dixon built. The company is a family-owned business and was started way back in 1852 when a young man called John Wilmot, who was a bricklayer at the time, gained his first contract for a total price of £1. The project was to construct a water well down in Cambridgeshire. In contrast, today, Wilmot Dixon has a turnover of £1 billion, employs over 2,000 people, and it's now headed by Rick Wilmot, who is the 5th generation to lead the company. So it's been going a long time with the same family. We pretty much build everything: schools, homes, leisure centres, hospitals, fire stations, transport projects, you name it, we pretty much build it. So a little bit about me. My title is a bit of a mouthful, but I'm known as a senior social value manager. Without going into too much detail today about my job, basically my role is to lead a team of incredibly passionate people who make sure that when we build any project within a community, we don't just bring the bricks and mortar and build amazingly quality buildings, but that we also bring a lot of other benefits and value to the people and the businesses and the organisations that are there in that area. The idea being that we actually make more of a difference than when we bring more of a difference to the community than when we first arrived. So the social value team are responsible, and this is really just a snapshot of what some of the things we do. We make sure that we create job opportunities for the local people in the area when we're building a particular project, and we feel really strongly about making sure that we give those people that need a chance most those opportunities. So, for example, we've got a really good track record of providing employment for ex-offenders and really helping them to change the direction of their lives. We ensure that training such as apprenticeships are offered to the young people in the local schools and colleges, and we'll also support local organisations, say for instance food banks, community centres, and more recently, a good example recently is that we've been donating huge amounts of sanitary products and clothing and financial donations to the local Ukrainian community centres across the northwest, making sure that those people that are really having to flee their homes right now get the supplies that they need once they reach the borders of Ukraine. So as you can imagine, my role is extremely rewarding, requires an awful lot of skills such as teamwork, communication and problem solving, to name a few. These are not skills that you get grades for. These are the skills that you'll be developing right now at school and college. So I'd really think about how you're developing these skills now while you're in class. Now, whilst you may be thinking that this job isn't a job for me, look, we're all different. The point I want to progress to is that there are many jobs in construction, jobs that you may never have thought or heard of. I could probably take a confident bet that most of you hadn't heard of a social value manager until today. So I want you to take a look at this video and consider some of the key messages being told. Thanks, Jane. So some of the key messages basically from that video was really, and it came up in the previous presentation as well, is really about the stereotyping and some of the myths that people have about the roles in construction. There's two key points really that I wanted to make. The first is that jobs in construction are not just about the muddy boots, the hard hats, and for those who identify as boys. When I walk into our offices at work, I see a really diverse group of people working together in just some of the roles that you will hopefully see in the video. But we're continually looking to improve this. An example to give you is that in our business that we have a target that by 2030 we'll have gender parity, 50-50 gender parity. What that means is we'll basically have a good split of 50% men and 50% women within Wilmot Dixon construction. At the moment, that's a really ambitious target, but it's something that we feel really strongly about. So thinking about roles that are not about the muddy boots and the hard hats, if you're good with numbers, we've got quantity surveyors in the business. We have design managers if you're good with design and technology. We have bid writing team. If you've got a love for creative writing, they're the people that win us the work to convince the customers that we're right for the project. We've got environmental managers for those people who have a passion for looking after our planet. At the same time, in the same breath, when I say that construction is not just about the boots and the hard hats, we need right now more than ever young people to actually consider getting a trade. And what I mean by trade is those jobs such as bricklaying, tiling, plastering, electrics, plumbing, painting and decorating. We're actually experiencing what we call a skills crisis in the construction industry, and what that means basically is that the older generation who are in the industry and getting to that point of retiring and leaving the industry, those numbers are not being filled by the young people that are coming into the industry. So again, part of my job is to really attract the next generation, and hopefully some of you here listening today. And the strange thing is that actually these tradespeople at the moment are earning an absolute fortune. So while John Wilmot, who I spoke about earlier, was only earning £3 a day back in 1852 for bricklaying, today bricklayers are earning in the region of £1,000 a week, and some even more depending where they live. So what's this got to do with leadership? Well, I don't believe that leaders are just those people that we see sitting at big desks making the big decisions at the top of a hierarchy. For me, leaders are those people who are courageous, who challenge the norm, lead by example, step out of comfort zones. As one wise man once said, be the change you want to see in the world. No matter what your background or your identity, please know that there is a career in construction for you. And if no one's ever told you this before, it might be because they just didn't know enough about construction, or perhaps they believe some of the stereotypes that exist about our industry. One of the girls in the video, which hopefully you might see, did make a really good point about the fact that construction at the moment is becoming a really exciting industry to work in, becoming increasingly diverse and inclusive. But it really takes young people like yourselves to think differently and break that mould. I've got an example of a young girl that I was working with in the last few weeks. She had done really well in her GCSEs, but in year 10 or in year 9, I think it was, and had been dissuaded to take wood tech. So carried on with her GCSEs, went on to do her A-levels, but after 3 months of her doing her A-levels, realised it wasn't something she wanted to do, and she left. And she came back to the thought that it was actually wood work that she wanted to do. And she came to me and said, and you know, what I think I want to do is work in joinery. So we gave her a week's work experience on one of our sites, working alongside our joiners. She absolutely loved it, knew that that's what she'd wanted to do since she was in year 9, and has now successfully gained herself an apprenticeship with a local joinery firm. So for you young women who are thinking that trades aren't for you, or maybe you've been persuaded otherwise, please rethink. Thanks, Jane. I don't know whether you can get that video on again now.
What sort of jobs do you think girls do?
I think they do a bit of teaching people, policewoman, nurse. When I grow up, I want to be a police and a builder. I would like to be a gymnastics teacher.
I would like to be like a NASCAR driver or F1.
I quite like to be like an engineer, but I wouldn't really like to be in the construction site because it's a bit too noisy and busy for me. I like to be a spy. To sing in space.
When I was growing up, I wanted to be a show jumper.
A range of things: a vet, forensic scientist, I think even a gladiator at one point.
I wanted to be go into the police.
A race car driver.
I never before considered a career in construction at all. I thought the construction industry is probably made up of working on a dirty building site with a lot of men.
People have a bit of a perception of what construction is like, and that building sites full of people that are going to be wolf whistling at you and things like that, and it's just not like that at all.
It is a very friendly atmosphere. Clearly it is 99% men that are actually on the site, but it's not intimidating.
Before I had my first site visit, if I'm totally honest, I was terrified. From really silly ideas as to where would I park, where do I walk, how will people talk to me, how will I be received. I had the best welcome ever. Everyone was just really proud to share with me what they were creating and what they were building and why they were doing it.
Part of the reason women don't come in the industry, I think, is because they don't know the roles that are available to them.
It's not just about bricks and building high-vis jackets on site. There are loads of different roles, and within Wilmot Dixon there's over 200.
From sort of legal to HR to marketing to quantity surveying to operational. Any of those are open to any gender or any diversity. So actually you can choose and go into whatever you like.
I don't think there's anything wrong with girls work on a building site, but it's kind of like a stereotype that it's mainly like men.
It's not bad to say boys can do more than girls. They might help to build stuff or be a construction manager maybe. Helping layout, doing layout. I think I've seen like girls building. Well, men and women are equal, so they can both do anything they want to do.
It's becoming an industry that's so diverse and so kind of exciting to be part of.
The construction industry is a wonderful place to work because actually you can physically see and you physically end up producing something at the end of the day that you can say, I was involved in building that.
I think women can do anything they like, just like men can do whatever they like.
If the girls came home and told me they wanted to be a bricklayer, I'd support them 100%. So long as they're happy in what they do. I think that's the biggest lesson I've learned. Making sure you're happy in what you do. Doesn't matter what it is.
Yeah, it's the best thing that I've ever done.
So I'm going to pass you over to Janine next. So thank you, Janine.
Morning everyone, and a happy International Women's Day. My name is Janine Higgins and I work for an organisation called ISG. Now ISG are a construction company which is very similar to Wilmot Dixon, and I do a really similar role to what Beth does. But the reason I wanted to talk to you today was because I just wanted to give you a little bit of insight into where I came from. I didn't go to university, I didn't go to college, and I just really wanted to tell you about me and my kind of journey in the construction industry, because it's not just about the companies that you work for, it's about how you get to where you are. So I just want to give you a little bit of information about myself because frankly that's my favourite subject. So where did I start? So I left school at 16. I originally wanted to be a teacher. That didn't happen because I looked at going to college and I looked at going to university and I thought, well, I can't really be doing with all those years of not really having any money. So I decided to get a job. And my dad said to me, well, you can either get a job or you can go to college. So I decided that I was going to get a job. And I started working for a recruitment company that was 5 minutes away from where I lived. I could walk to work, and it was an engineering recruitment company. And they supplied a lot of people to oil rigs and shipbuilding and really heavy industry power stations and things like that, and I absolutely loved it. And I was a trainee and I earned £28 a week, and I was allowed to keep my first week's wages, and I spent it all on a hairdryer. And then after that I worked my way up, working within the industry but finding out really what people did. So nobody's ever heard of an instrument technician. Nobody's ever heard of a plater. So these are heavy industry type roles. What I found was that it was a very male dominated industry. Now we have changed over the last few years. I've been in the industry now for over 30 years and I've seen the changes that have happened. When I went into construction recruitment, I found that there was a real attitude towards me as a woman that I didn't really know what I was talking about because I was female, and the industry was very, very male dominated, and we were in a situation where there wasn't any women in the industry at all, and it wasn't even considered. But I learned what people do. I learned what a joiner does. I learned what a electrician does. And then I was able to go onto sites and I was able to talk to men about joinery and about electrical installation. And they kind of suddenly realized, oh, maybe you do know what you're talking about. So then I developed those relationships with those clients over a number of years. And more recently, for the last 5 years, I set up a training division and a social value division. So for a recruitment company. And what I found was that a lot of people come into our courses, yes, they were predominantly men, but occasionally we did have the odd female coming in. And then I moved on to where I am now, and I've been with ISG now for not very long. But what I do now is I get to do all the bits of the job that I love, and that is working with the communities. We do a lot of work for the Ministry of Justice. We do a lot of work on prisons. So my role is to help ex-offenders and help prison leavers into work. We work with women's prisons, helping women come out of prison and go into the construction industry. As Beth touched on, there are lots of roles within the construction industry that you've probably not even considered. And as a girl at school, you probably being encouraged to do what you would call stereotypical subjects, such as hair and beauty, childcare, cooking. But what about those other roles? What about engineering? What about science? And all of these subjects actually lend themselves really, really well to construction, particularly things like design, as Beth touched on, planning. If you're good at planning and you like problem solving, then a planner would be an absolutely ideal role for you. Very brief overview of ISG. What we do is we essentially we build things, but we work in what's called the public sector. So we build things like prisons and schools and leisure centres, and essentially we use taxpayers' money, so that's your money and our money, to build these buildings that we build. What we also do, though, is we reach out to the local communities, as I say, and we work with schools. We do career talks, we do mock interviews, we paint fences, we donate to food banks. There's lots and lots of different things that we do within the construction industry that you've probably never even considered or even think happens. It's not all about digging holes and laying bricks. There's a lot of brains behind the building, and you don't need to go to university if you don't think it's for you, because there are lots of opportunities for apprenticeships. We have things like degree apprenticeships where people can join us and they'll get paid while they're actually studying their degree. And that's things like construction management and QS, so quantity surveying, planning. Lots of different roles offer degree apprenticeships within the construction industry. So if you're thinking like I did, oh my God, I don't want to go to university because I'm not going to ever have any money and I'm always going to be skint, that's not actually the case, because you can study for a degree while you're actually working, and that's great. I want to just give you some stats, if that's at all possible. Now, I did mention earlier on that when I first joined the industry, it was very male dominated, and you would never find a female working on a site. If you came across a female plumber, for instance, an organisation wouldn't take them because they were worried about how they were going to be perceived on site. But just to let you know that has now changed, and more women are coming into the industry. So at ISG, we have over 2,000 employees. Now, 22% of those 2,000 are women. That's a fair chunk, really, when you consider it. Our CEO is a woman. We have 3 women on our stat board, which is our absolute top level. They're the people that make the decisions. And to have 3 women on a board of 8 people is really, really good. Talk about our grad program, our graduate program, our placements and our apprentices. And we've taken on in 2021, so from September last year, we took on 74 graduates, placements or apprentices, and 37% of those people were female. So when you think about construction and you think that it is just digging holes and laying bricks, it really isn't. It can be, if that's what you want it to be. We have loads of women on site now that are working in trade roles. We have lady joiners, we have lady painter and decorators, we have lady banksmen, we have lady electricians, plumbers, you name it. We now have females doing those roles. But then also we have female site managers, and their job is to make sure that that building gets built on time and on budget, and they're in control. So they're the leaders of that site, and that can be you. And I think amazing. Really that's all I've got to say. I just wanted to touch on Beth's video. What an amazing video it was, and to see so many women talking about the industry and talking about how their perceptions have changed from before they were in the industry to now is a really great thing to see. Thanks very much.
Oh, thank you. That was great, Janine. Really, really interesting what you had to say there. And again, I also echo your comments about the video that Beth was able to show us. I think it was really powerful. Okay, so we're going to move on to our next speaker now, and I'm going to pass you over to Polly. Thanks, Polly.
Thank you. Hi, everyone. I'm Polly Caldwell, and I'm a product lead at Auto Trader, as you can see on this slide. So I've had a bit of a varied career already. I've only worked professionally for 10 years or so, but within that time I've had quite a few different roles. But what I wanted to do this morning is sort of tell you a little bit about those different roles, but also touch on kind of how I ended up where I did. I think probably at your age now at school, you feel like there's a lot of decisions to be made, and looking back for myself when I was at school, it certainly felt like there were these key decisions that the rest of my life was sort of hang on the balance of. So I wanted to tell you a little bit about how I made some of those decisions and hopefully put your mind at ease. So it's not going to be a massive history of me bore off. Hopefully it'll be slightly interesting and not quite as detailed as this picture would suggest, but bear with me and hopefully you'll take some interesting stuff. So as I said, I'm a product lead today, which essentially means I work with technology teams, with coders, with software developers, and sort of help them create the vision that is in my head around what this great product could be. So how did I sort of get into this role? So if we just go on to the next slide, please. Here we go. So this is a cartoon to try and depict what happened to me at a very young age. So I was literally, I think, like in my first week of primary school, and we had a computer. So back then that would have been what, like 1994. So computers were pretty hardcore back then. They weren't as slick as sort of like the MacBook Pros and everything you've got today. So it was a bit of a brick anyway, but it electrocuted me. And then I'm blaming that personally as to why I then hated computers. I hated technology. I didn't like, you know, when we did like IT at school, I found it really difficult, and I pretty much just switched off to all of those sorts of subjects, things like maths as well. I didn't particularly like it. I wasn't very good at it, and I just found it really difficult to sort of engage. And like I say, I'm blaming that on being electrocuted, bad association, but it was just something that I just decided I wasn't very good at, and I'd kind of sort of switched off. So just go on to the next slide. We can see here kind of how I felt about maths specifically. So I went on to do a maths degree. So things did change, but back when I was in year 8, I absolutely hated maths. I found it really difficult and I just could not get it. I think the red bit here that's denoting the love it on the left hand side is probably a bit generous, because I absolutely detested it and I just found it really, really difficult. But actually what happened when I went into year 9, I got a different maths teacher. She was she was pretty hardcore, to be fair. Like, if you didn't apply yourself, then, you know, there was nowhere to hide. She was strict and she was fair but strict. And actually, just having someone who has always sort of forced you to engage, I realised that actually I could do it. It was difficult, and I had to apply myself and actually, you know, really put the effort in. But over the course of a year, I learned to love it, and I didn't just love it because I was good at it. I loved it because it was difficult, and then, you know, you got sort of like the result off the end. So sometimes, you know, things that you find difficult can be really rewarding. So don't necessarily write off everything that you're bad at, because yeah, with some practice, with some learning, you maybe can sort of learn to love it with some time. But so I started to like maths. I thought I was okay at it. I was starting to sort of see the fruits of my labour. And I was using that to sort of think, okay, well, what career might I want to do off the back of this? Maths, that must be a maths teacher, right? Like, in the sphere of influence that I had in year 9, I had my mum, who was a nurse, and then I had all of the maths teachers and all the other teachers at school, and then sort of like hairdressers and things like that. I didn't have a lot of external influences to give me ideas of what other careers I could maybe go for. So they were sort of things that I was thinking about. So I was thinking, yeah, maybe a maths teacher. But then we actually had someone similar to kind of what we're doing this morning. We had someone come into our school. It was a man who worked at HSBC, and I thought, okay, HSBC, that sounds like it will be vaguely related to sort of maths and finance, and maybe I could explore a career in that. We also had the opportunity to do like a work experience day, where I ended up going to HSBC, and they had free food basically. So in like the little canteeny bit, they had like a coffee machine and they had cakes and stuff. So I was like, yeah, definitely like the idea of HSBC and something to do with maths. So I was like, okay, I'm pretty certain that's almost a decision made. But if you just flick on to the next slide, essentially what happened was I found a book of careers somewhere at school, and I was flicking through this book of careers and basically just seeing what the highest sort of salaries were, and I landed on this page for a job called actuary. I'd never heard of it before. I didn't know anything about it, but it had 100k as the average salary. So at that point, I'm thinking, okay, I like maths. HSBC seemed good, and they work in sort of something financial. And now we've got this actuary business, which is something to do with sort of like finance as well. And it's pretty much a combination of those three things that my mind was made up that that's what I wanted to do. And that's what I sort of you know, put all of my effort into and really double down on maths. So I suppose that's kind of a decision that I made at that early age. I think it was about sort of year 10 by the time I discovered this actuary thing. And yeah, that's sort of the decision I made, and it was based on as little as that. So don't feel like what you go on to study has to be, you know, really well thought out or, you know, based on loads of sound reasoning, because sometimes just going off an idea is enough. Like, something with a steady career, maths is, you know, you're going to get a job in something. So that was kind of like my thought process there. So that's one decision for you. If you just flick on to the next slide, you can see that I decided to go to the University of Manchester. Again, which university, if any, you go to is a big decision. I based my decision here on where was far away from where I lived. And then also I was told that it was good nightlife in Manchester. So I was like, okay, we'll give that a go. So again, it doesn't have to be a big scary decision. It's kind of where you get in, or maybe kind of yeah, where's got good nightlife maybe. But when I got to the University of Manchester to study maths, I quite quickly realised that there weren't many sort of women doing maths. There weren't many women lecturers, and there weren't many women on the course either, which I'd found quite surprising, because I come from an all-girls school where a lot of the teachers were women. At my primary school, all the teachers were women. So I was quite surprised to find that it wasn't well represented, basically. I thought that women liked maths. So I was quite surprised for that. But you quickly sort of, you know, find the women around you. Men aren't that bad. And it doesn't have to be an off-putting thing. There can still be, you know, great connections and sort of support within these roles, even if all these subjects, even if you're not sort of part of the majority within there. So, you know, I'd decided on actuary, I'd gone to university, I was studying maths. We're all pretty good in terms of reaching that final goal of the 100k salary. Until I graduated. So in my final year, I started, you know, looking for jobs and roles and things like that. And I went to quite a few sort of actuary like graduate days where you go along and basically have to do like a presentation and all of this sort of thing. And what I found was that there was a lot of people there who were very well spoken. You may be aware already that I'm not necessarily the most well spoken, and they were very posh and they'd come from very good backgrounds, and I felt really uncomfortable. I didn't feel like I belonged, and it did just, for the first time, I was sort of questioning this sort of career path that I'd sort of chosen. So I thought, well, maybe it's just actuary, maybe I can look around for some other sort of, you know, financial sort of maths-based roles. So I went for some like accountancy and for some sort of like other roles like that. But again, it was the same sort of very corporate, very professional, suits, ties, blazers, you know, it was just very not me, essentially. So I was a little bit of a conundrum. I was like, well, I'm going to go for it anyway, because, you know, I've just spent the last however many years at university like on this path towards this thing. But actually it was my dissertation supervisor who I spoke to, and he suggested software development, and I was like, I don't like computers. Like way back when I had that bad experience, they're not for me. And he pointed out to me that actually the work that I'd been doing as part of my dissertation was using this thing called MATLAB, which was nothing like software development, I can tell you that. But he thought that I was good at it. So I was like, okay, well, I'll have a little look at it. I can give it a go. And I went for a few roles in software development, a few graduate open days, and it was worlds apart from those sort of financial sort of roles I've been going for. People were wearing like normal clothes or wearing trainers, you know, just comfortable, like relaxed, sort of not posh or like well-to-do at all. It was just a very comfortable, encouraging and welcoming environment. There still weren't a lot of women, but you know, the people who were there were more relatable, a little bit more like me, shall we say. So if you flip on to the next slide, essentially I got to a point where I could choose between the 100k salary, which I'd been set on from a very early age, or actually my happiness. And it reminds me of that video just that we saw before. Actually, where you're happy and where you feel comfortable is the most important thing. And for me, that was definitely in the more sort of technology, digital space. Quite similar to what we've heard this morning, there were so many different roles in technology, in digital, that you just wouldn't necessarily realise. Like I'd never heard of a software developer. I know it's a little bit more mainstream now, but the perception and the reality are so different. It's not like Big Bang Theory. It's, you know, it's just like normal people in like an office. That's pretty cool. So I started off on my software developer journey. It was really tough. It took a lot of time and effort and dedication to sort of, you know, get my head around it all. But I spent, what, 8 years doing that, working my way up to become a leader, a tech lead within that sort of skill set. And it was at that point that I decided to actually branch out and become a product lead instead. So I suppose my message here is it's not about, you know, having your career defined from a really early age. It's about finding something that you like and then sort of dabbling around in it. Sort of like within technology, there are so many different roles. People come in as one thing, like a software developer, and then they end up being a product lead in my case, or you might come in like in technology support or even like account management and then go into, you know, software development. There are apprentices, there are degree apprentices, there are, you know, graduate roles, there are all sorts of different things that are available throughout technology, not just at Auto Trader. But it's just one of those really eye-opening things where actually there's literally a job for everyone, and it's so much fun and it's so welcoming as an industry that I would strongly encourage anyone to have a little look at roles in technology, roles in digital. And I know that I chose the happiness over the money, but it's pretty well paid as well. And it's sort of, there are so many jobs available that it's one of those where I think you're set up for life if you can get into technology. So I would definitely recommend everyone to have a little look at Auto Trader. We do a lot of like apprenticeship roles, as I say. So yeah, thank you very much for listening. Have a look at technology, like maths because it's cool. And yeah, thank you very much. Please ask some questions as well.
Oh, we will do. Thank you so much, Polly. Really enjoyed that. And thanks once again to our other presentations from Holly, Emma, Beth and Janine. So I'm just having a look if there's any questions. So we've got one coming here. I'm going to I'm not quite sure how it's been phrased here. Basically saying, what can large organisations do better to attract a more diverse workforce in terms of the gender balance that that Beth referred to? And I don't mind which one of you maybe wants to pick that one up.
So technology is a really male-dominated industry. There are a lot more men than what there are women, and we often say that, like, if our CTO, our Chief Technology Officer, was to leave or stop in his particular role, there would not be a woman CTO out there that we could recruit to replace him. So a lot of that is because there just isn't that pipeline through the organisation. So in my opinion, it's about doing things like this, where we're reaching out to the younger generation and really just sort of letting people know about all the great opportunities that there are in these different industries. Because when we get to sort of like graduate level or apprentice level roles, we find it much easier to be able to recruit those women in, and then fast track them through the organisations and really build that talent up. But if people don't know about the roles, then they're not doing the right subjects at school, or they're not going on that correct apprenticeship, so we're just never going to get them into those more senior roles. So I think it's really just about letting everyone know about all the great opportunities that are out there, and that it's not that stereotype that you thought it was. It's actually something much better and much more fun and encouraging.
Yeah, I'd agree with that, definitely. I think the video that Beth showed, I know we've mentioned it a couple of times now, I think it was really powerful there in demonstrating kind of like how young an age young people need to be hearing these messages, so it was quite interesting and quite refreshing to hear a lot of the children that were speaking, the really young children, being able to talk quite confidently about the fact that women should be able to do the same jobs as men and vice versa. But I think, although we work with high schools, do you think it's important that we start to have those conversations at a very, very young and formative age?
Yeah, I think that video proved it really well. Like, if you ask like a 6-year-old, what do you think like of a doctor, or what do you think of a firefighter, they're always going to say like a man, because from those really, really early ages, that's what the stereotype of society is sort of enforcing upon them. So the earlier the better. I think there's some really good resources now actually for literally like 3-year-olds to sort of like educate them about those different roles, but it's yeah, the sooner the better for sure.
Great. Okay. If I could also ask Janine and Beth, just because you have similar roles in your organisations with the social value piece, what sort of activities are you undertaking in terms of reaching out to schools and colleges to have those conversations, I wonder?
So I'll kick off with that. We are going out to schools all day, every day. So we go into primary schools to talk about construction. We invite primary school children to come and visit a construction site. We do the same with secondary schools. We do lots and lots of careers fairs and career talks to promote the industry. And just really touching on really what Polly said there, it's about bringing through that next generation. And I think it starts with parents, and I think that it needs to be enforced in schools as well, that it's not necessarily about just kind of people going into roles that are or studying subjects that are stereotypically male or female. It's about asking the kids, what do they actually want to do? So because ultimately, all the young women that are sitting and watching this event, you are essentially masters of your own destiny, and it is completely up to you what you choose to do. But like you say, if there's not the information out there, then you're not going to know what you don't know. So yeah, we are in schools all day, every day, talking to students and teachers. We're educating a lot of teachers as well with regards to the industry, because, you know, teachers have been in education pretty much their entire lives, and a lot of them have not experienced other industries. So it's about educating the teachers as well.
Sure. No, it's great, and it's great that you're able to provide that with some very credible sort of evidence, because obviously you work in that environment yourself, so you can bring that to life for students rather than a teacher sort of half guessing it, I suppose. Thanks for that, Janine. Could I go to if I could go to Emma? Sorry, so if I could go to Emma and Holly, just about, could you just say a little bit more about the graduate schemes that you've undertaken or that you're currently on? And I'd also like to hear, if you don't mind, a little bit about what the recruitment process was for that and how it came to be in the first place.
Yeah, Holly, I can't see your camera anymore, so I'm happy to jump in on this first.
Thank you.
So yeah, the graduate scheme that we're both on is called the FAST stream. It's one of the top 5 graduate schemes in the UK consistently, and there's a multitude of different schemes you can join. So I'm personally on a statistical stream, so I work as a statistician, and I think Holly's on a generalist scheme, which is you get to experience lots of different roles, but there's also different professions such as social researcher, finance, operational researcher, economics, etc. So that's a 3 to 4 year scheme. And the application process is quite long. I think it's pretty similar from other graduate schemes that I've applied for at the time. Very similar. You do some sort of online assessments, a video interview, and a group interview. And then I think in some schemes you have to do some sort of knowledge specific panel. Certainly for the statistics one, you had to do, they asked you a bit about that. So that's the kind of main civil service graduate scheme. But as I mentioned, there are also apprenticeships. I think someone mentioned a degree apprenticeship. I think the civil service do offer them, and they also offer other apprenticeship for other qualifications as well. But also a lot of the, especially the entry level roles, don't require degrees. You can come straight out of school. I know a couple of people who've done that, and you're still able to make your way up in the civil service as well. And did that answer everything, or have I missed something out?
No, that's good. That's good. I mean, in terms of where you
to say on the, oh sorry.
Yeah, no, it's okay. Go ahead, Emma.
I wanted to say something just quickly on the last question about how we can kind of encourage more women and diverse people into organisations and large companies. I think definitely 100% agree with everything that's been said, and we do a lot of university outreach as well. And we're from the Gender Equality Network, and we do a lot of stuff with schools outreach. I was also doing some stuff with the Girl Guides as well. But another thing that I think the civil service does really well is the culture of the organisation. I think Holly mentioned inclusivity is one of our core values, and it's really pushed out the organisation. And my experience so far has been a really, really positive one, and it's something that's genuinely kind of pushed within the organisation. Yeah.
That's great. I was just going to ask you there. I know we've talked about sort of gender balance and inclusivity with gender, but one of the things I wanted to ask about was where you're seeing evidence and positive improvements in organisations around women of colour that are represented within the various departments within the civil service.
Yeah, definitely. So there isn't, I currently work slightly off government, so I don't see a lot of the kind of main diversity within central government. I don't know if Holly, can you unmute yourself? Is that, I feel like you can't. Okay, I'll try and give an answer, but yeah, definitely this is something kind of that we're consciously working on within the civil service, and we have lots of dedicated mentoring schemes for women of colour, where people can kind of link up with current and potential future leaders and have sort of mentoring programs. But I know there are other schemes in place. Holly, I don't know if you want to come in on that.
Yeah, no, sorry about that. I had a glitch, so it threw me out. But all I would say is that I currently work in the MOD. So I work with the Army, and in terms of diversity, I think I missed the beginning of your question, so apologies about that. But in terms of diversity within the Army, there is quite a lot of different ways for them to be able to join. So they do a lot of outreach programs. They go to schools. They go to visit lots of younger people to try and get them interested. And I know that there is quite a diverse group of people within the army, and in terms of the civil service, I do believe, like Emma said, there are outreach programs, there are different schemes that you can join, there are buddy schemes, there are different things that the Fast Stream Gender Network actually do outreach programs with. So there is ways of doing it, but unfortunately I missed the beginning of the question, so I don't really know how else to answer, so apologies about that.
I was asking about representation. We've talked a lot today about gender balance, about diversity, specifically with women of colour within the organisation.
No, I think in terms of women in colour, I work with quite a lot of different women in colour within the Ministry of Defence. And I've only been part of the civil service for about 7 months now. So I haven't been to any other department at the moment, but we do, as part of the Women's Network, we do outreach programs, and we do go to different places where we can get in contact with women of colour and make sure that everybody has a voice and that everybody has the opportunity to join. So I don't have any statistics, unfortunately, but we definitely do try to outreach as far and wide as possible. And it's not just a case of we go to the typical universities or typical schools that you would expect, but we try and go everywhere. We try and see as many people as we possibly can.
Yeah, fantastic. That's good to hear. Okay, I'm very conscious of time, everybody. So that brings us, I'm afraid, to the end of our Meet Your Future session on women in leadership. And all that leaves me to say too is thank you so much to all our speakers. So Holly, Emma, Beth, Janine and Polly, thanks so much for sharing your stories and your insight. And thanks indeed, of course, to all of you out there for joining and sharing the experience with us today. As a reminder, GMAX, I'm going to ask Jane to just pop it in the Q&A there. GMAX obviously is your go-to place for information, advice and guidance. And if you're not aware of it or you need help using it, do speak to your careers teacher. Any teachers, parents or carers that are listening, we've also popped in the chat a link for you to provide some feedback. So we'd be really grateful if you could take the time to complete this. As a team, we're always keen to provide the best possible resources to schools for use with our students, and we rely on your feedback and evaluation so we can be always improving what support we can give schools with their careers programme. So finally, once again, thanks so much to everybody for being here. Thanks to Jane, my colleague, for providing the tech support, and enjoy the rest of your day, and goodbye from me.